Hello out there.
The Hogs Die is brought to you
Redskins
by
land.
TicketClub.com,
To
your
another
one-stop shop for live
off-season
events
episode
nationwide.
of the
Whether you're looking for
Hogs
game,
Die.
theater, or
Sean
live
had to
performance
bail
tickets,
for
don't
some
sweat it.
reason that we don't know
TicketClub.com
yet.
has you covered.
So it's
So
just
make sure you're
me,
going there for
Alex
all your
Zeese,
live entertainment
along
needs,
with
and make
Steve
sure you're
and
clicking
Jamal.
over to them from the banner
I
at the
hope
top
you
of the
guys are doing
hogsdie.com.
well. I was dubbed as host for this week because anytime Sean's out, you guys shout, "Not it," and run away from your computers about as fast as possible.
Wait a minute. Hold on a minute. I'm trying to be good
You're-
here by allowing you to host. That's exactly what it is. You know, if you want to get an hour of me nonstop talking, let me host. If you would like to talk, you host.
Well,
I am maintaining my composure. I'm not responding.
And let's just admit that Sean is either out gallivanting around with his girlfriend or he's just sick and tired of the Redskins. It's one of those two things.
And maybe a little bit of both. You know, if I had a girlfriend, I wasn't married, I'd probably want to gallivant a lot more too. You know.
Your wife would be upset if you had a girlfriend.
Maybe.
Maybe not. I don't know. I mean, that's your thing.
You know.
If you want to do that, I'm not.
I think I might be. It
Sean
would
will
get me out
provide
of her
his
hair. I
answers
think
when
that's
he
the big
comes
thing.
back.
Sean will probably tell us what was going on the last.
We're gonna.
We need to start grilling him when he misses shows. Speaking of grilling, let's get to the grilling that the Redskins are doing of all these other coaching candidates who are defensive coordinator candidates who don't seem to want to come to D.C. because that's, I think, the big story for the Redskins this week. Greg Williams, a name we all knew and loved at one point. The Redskins not interviewed him, tried to get him to come here, didn't try to get him to come here. The story is very hazy to me. And this is the fourth defensive coordinator candidate that they've not interviewed as a potential defensive coordinator or something like that.
Well, yeah, it's been Greg Williams, Todd Bowles,
Right.
Steve Wilkes, and is there anybody else? I mean, there's
was
a couple
Vance
names
Joseph one of them? I don't know.
I
know there's three.
I don't know if
let's
this
just
was
say
for
three.
a coordinator. Okay.
Here's the thing, okay? First of all, I think Greg Williams is a case of, you can never go home again. And
trying to hook up with your ex kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's not going to go well. If your ex is out there and she's lonely or he's lonely, it may work well temporarily, but it's not going to be good in the long term. And that's the case with Greg Williams. We think of him fondly because he was a part of the Joe Gibbs team mainly and only.
Well, he was part of the last time this defense was good, which, let's let that sink in. That's been a long time.
But also, I mean, what defenses has Greg Williams been a part of since then that have been all that good? There's been a couple here and there. There's been a few here and there. But this dude is not like, setting the league on fire anymore. And he got the New Orleans Saints in a whole bunch of trouble.
Yeah, that's true. It's hard to forget about that. He was suspended for a whole year for that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe he was. I mean, I think one of the issues that was so fascinating about this is, people, the arguments that was made for Greg Williams, that it was the things that he brought that wasn't necessarily about coaching. It was more so motivation and accountability. Sure. And that's fine. But, just because you're upset at Minuski or upset at the defensive performance that has been under Minuski, like, what does that really say? Like, if you wanted two different versions of coaches, but they bring you around the same result, like, does that make you happy? So I understand people's frustration and why they wanted Greg Williams, but at the same time, like, at the end of the day, the results may be the same, and it's not really gonna help the team in the long run. Like, Jay Gruden is only here for another year if things go bad. You would imagine he'll only be here for another year. Right. So you can stop living off the stuff from a decade ago, 15 years ago, actually, not even a decade. It's longer than a decade. 15 years ago. Yeah, it's been a while. So
hold on, I'm trying to do the math.
It's just
Let's
really
see.
not working.
5 years of Gruden, 4 years of Shanahan, 2 years of Zorn.
Sean Taylor died in 2007, and that was Gibbs' last year. So it's
11 seasons.
Yeah.
Well, I go back to 2004. So
that's when he came in. So, fair enough.
Yeah, that's when he came in. So that's on me. So yeah, 11 seasons technically.
But not just Greg Williams, the Todd Bowles thing, first off, Steve and I have talked about this a bit. The way the Redskins are going about this is horrible. You don't start interviewing defensive coordinators when you still have a defensive coordinator. And people have come at us on Twitter and said, oh, like if you were at a job, you don't think they would start interviewing candidates? No, I've actually been on the other side of this. You don't have interviews with people till you fire somebody. It's just bad etiquette.
It's just bad form. It's tacky. It's bad form. It's no class whatsoever. And, of course, this is Bruce Allen's MO. Is no class, and they've done the Redskins did this to Jim Zorn. Nobody liked Jim Zorn as a head coach. I'm not saying that, but they did the man dirty by interviewing and basically having Mike Shanahan agree to be the coach while Zorn was still in the company.
Right, 3 games left. They basically had an agreement with Shanahan.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's just terrible. But the other thing here is part of the reason why these non-interview interviews are not going well is that what Jamal said. Jay Gruden only has 2 years left on his deal. And let me just tell you something. There's very little precedent for lame duck coaches to stick around for the final year, okay? And so this season is going to be the key. If Gruden gets renewed again, it's going to be at the end of this season. And so really and truly what they were doing is telling coaches, would you come here for a year and then get fired next year? The way the public kind of rationalized this to themselves, I saw was that a lot of fans thought, well, Greg can just step in and become the head coach. Well, it doesn't work like that. Very rarely, and that's not going to establish a positive working relationship between Jay Gruden and Greg Williams. Anyway, so it's no wonder it's most coaches would be turned off by this process. Number one, and number two, they're interviewing for a 1-year temporary job, and coaches want stability, not to get fired in 12 months.
Now, there's another little sub thing to this whole story that kind of irked me because I'm a fan of good propaganda and not bad propaganda. And that was that they said today in a press release, we weren't interviewing people to replace Greg Minuski. Jay just wanted to get a different perspective.
I'm sorry, was that a press
release? I don't
know
if it might not be. It was, it might have just been in the Post. It was something, it was put out there that's an official stance of the team.
It was quotes. I believe somebody may have just said
it was a quote. I don't know
but
if it was a press release.
It was definitely. Yeah, it was definitely quoted.
I can confirm it was not a press release, and so you guys are talking about a report.
A reporter quoted somebody saying that.
So what did they say again?
They said
I totally
that
missed what you said.
Gruden was talking to all these defensive coaches just to get a different perspective on the defense.
Oh yeah.
But here's the other thing. 2 days earlier, we heard that, or maybe not 2 days, maybe a few days more than that. But we heard that the only person who ever talked to Todd Bowles was Doug Williams. No one else. So how is Gruden getting that information then,
Well, let's tell people, first of all, what we know. What happened last week, which we talked about in the last show, is that Ben Kotwick is gone. We can confirm that Greg Minuski's contract is still valid from what we have been told. And so it has not expired. That we don't think is the case with Jim Tomsula. We think his contract has run. Cannot confirm that, but that's what we've heard, and that's what we think. Torian Gray is the huge wild card because
everyone said he was gone, and now he's not. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, and we heard that. Somebody told us that too, but he's still there.
I mean, so that was more than just somebody told us that. That was beat reporters were reporting.
A whole bunch of people. Yeah. I'm just saying somebody told us that too privately. And then the other thing that has happened is that there was a report on Wednesday, which is the day we're recording, that Olivadotti, the inside linebacker coach.
Thank you for saying it, because I'm not. He's been here about a decade, and I still have no idea how to pronounce his name properly.
I think I'm just guessing. I think it's Olivadotti, and so there was a report that he has been allowed to interview other teams, and to that I say good riddance, because inside linebackers have hugely underperformed. But that is the facts of what we know. The Redskins have not said a single word in any form except the report.
There was one other thing that I saw from one of the beat reporters. I can't remember which one. I think J.P. Finley. A couple guys probably retweeted it. You know how that goes. That the Redskins have actually blocked a couple of their other position coaches from interviewing.
Yeah.
The only name that they kind of put out there was the quarterback's coach, O'Connell.
You sound frustrated, Jamal. Frustrated? What was that sigh?
Yeah, it was a sigh, but not as frustrated as I've been in the past. It's nothing really serious for me. I do think that they at the end of the day they have we don't know what it is. I'll put it out. I'll preface this by saying this: we don't know what it is, but they have a plan. But it just never comes across as a clear plan. In the eyes of even reporters or beat reporters and people who are insiders. Like, nobody really knows what the plan is. They can't express that to the fans. And it doesn't help when you don't have a GM or a president who will address the fans after the season to, let them know what your plan is for the offseason. So when you go into hiding like that, your fans have no insight to what you plan on doing. You leave us guessing on so many things, and that's what we're doing. That's what so many other people are doing. And then on top of that, you have I don't know what that was. And on top of that, you have a lot of dysfunction and a lot of what's the word? It just looks like they don't know what they're doing and nobody wants to be with them.
Is what you're getting.
Like with the defensive coordinators. Yeah, like the defensive coordinators, everybody that you've allegedly talked to. We don't know if you had a meeting with them, but you allegedly talked to. None of them ended up, getting close to signing with you. They all signed with other teams.
I mean, on what fantasy did anybody think that a hot coaching candidate like Todd Bowles in particular, and Steve Wilkes is the other one, who thought that they would want to come to D.C. for a one-year gig?
I don't think so.
Now, if they had said we re-signed Gruden to another 3-year contract, maybe.
That's another thing. Of course, that's another thing. Because I think also the fans are kind of over. I mean, nobody's going to pretend that the Redskins are a prime, location, of course. But money talks, okay? I mean, Dan Snyder could overpay these guys and have them come here, which he's done. He did with Jay Gruden.
He has overpaid defensive coordinators in the past. I feel like Greg Williams was the highest paid defensive coordinator at one point.
Greg Williams was being paid. He was being paid head coach money. So Dan's not afraid to do that. But the point is, nobody was going to come here when Jay Gruden is on 2 years, and everybody knows it's really a one-year thing. That's just if the Redskins front office truly thought that.
And let's be clear, the thing about this being a 2-year, really 1-year contract, that's not just Gruden. That's universal to any coach, and multiple sports
coaches
too.
Coaches in the NFL don't play out their final year. They're
same with Major League Baseball. NHL is the only one I can think of where maybe that's not the case because NHL coaches don't even last a year most of the time. But
I mean, and as far as Jamal, you said they have a plan. I don't know if they have a plan.
Well,
do they really have a plan?
But see, that's the thing. Like in my opinion, I feel like every single organization they do have a plan going forward.
Maybe 31 of the organizations.
Who says it's a solid? Yes. See, and that's the bias that we have for the Redskins, knowing that we know them so well. However, you still you don't just go into a season with no plan. You don't go into an off season with no plan. You still have something that goes on in your organization to try and be better. Now, who says it's a very structured plan or it's a very solid plan? That's yet to be determined, and we don't even know it. So we can just form our own conclusion as the season or the off season goes along and see, this is what they plan to do. We don't even know that if that was the case. I'm just saying, in a general sense of the word plan, they have something.
I'll grant you that. They've talked about something for sure.
Yeah, and they have something that they want to get going. But who says it's strong, or who says that they'll execute it well, and things like that? I just don't. I don't think I'm not that confident.
I will boldly say it is not a strong plan, and they will not execute it well right now. Because we all know the plan involved them sending Jay Gruden out to talk to the press, not knowing if he was even going to have a job in 2 weeks. So that was part of the plan so far.
2 weeks, it was like a day. It wasn't 2 weeks. He could have been fired.
I'm talking big picture. He's not going to get rehired.
Yeah. You know what really needs to happen here, and I think, Alex, you're probably going to disagree with me on this. Dan Snyder needs to do a press conference. I think he needs, and granted, he's not been good at this in the past, but for God's sakes, prepare him. We've had politicians who are terrible speakers who end up getting through press conferences, okay? So somebody prepare him, but he needs to get out in front of the local media. And, if Dan Snyder was doing it, believe you me, we would make every effort to be there. Cause
we would probably be told no, but we would try.
Maybe so, but we would try, yeah. But he needs to come out and read a prepared statement that acknowledges the faults of the organization, accepts the blame on himself, and then gives us the plan for the next couple years. And then he needs to take questions from the media. And like the new Carolina Panthers owner, whose name is escaping me,
something like that. Yeah, he did that. Yes.
Yeah, he gave a presser. He did that. And Dan Snyder in particular, it needs to be him. It does not need to be Bruce Allen. It needs to be Dan Snyder. Needs to come out in front of the world and take responsibility for what has gone on with this organization. That would go a long way to fixing problems.
I agree with you in principle that this works. I just know from what we've seen with Dan Snyder, every time he talks to the media, he makes things worse.
Oh, it's a disaster. It's a disaster. But that's why I said prepare the man. Get Tony Wiley to go find the best debate coach you can find and bring him in. Seriously, and bring him in and prepare the man to face the media.
I'm just saying, the last time he talked to the media, he started a whole shitstorm talking about the name. So, just be ready. Somebody will put out a very simple question, and he'll step on a landmine. That's what Dan Snyder does. I kind of agree with you in principle. He needs to talk to the media. What I would do is, Dan Snyder's going to talk for 5 minutes, Bruce will talk for 15 minutes, and Dan will run in the back, and Bruce will take questions. That's how you do it.
Or maybe even they send like John Keim in a room with them.
Sit
down and maybe do it solo.
Even Larry Michael, somebody.
Even still, if you even got Bruce Allen, I would still help because he's been avoiding the media as well.
I think Grant Paulson's doing a count as to how long it's been since Bruce has spoken to the media.
It's like 500.
It's almost 600 days.
I mean, look. Yeah, I mean, there you go. Like that just shows you. Like even if he was to take questions, that would help. That would go a long way because we all know the type of stuff that Bruce Allen does behind the scenes. So I mean, if you can get him to talk, look. He's a mouthpiece for Dan Snyder.
I have more accountability in my job.
Even though he'll give you political answers,
where I have to answer questions to my bosses more than that.
Yeah, it's rough.
If I can make a bold prediction here, I think when we get through all this, because this has got to end soon, all this controversy with coaches, because the Senior Bowl is coming up. Isn't the East-West Shrine game? Isn't that
that's what everyone's practicing for? I think, yeah.
Yeah, but the Senior Bowl is the more important one, and that's coming up fairly soon. It comes up right after the Super Bowl, basically, and they need to send coaches and scouts down there to do the scouting. So the wheel has got to stop turning soon. So what I'm going to predict here is I think after all the talk, I think we're going to end up with basically the same coaches we have. They'll find some schlub to take Ben Kotwica's job, since he's gone. And they'll find some schlub to, fill in at linebackers. But for the most part, I think the entire staff is going to come back intact, and then they will either succeed or fail this coming year. That's what I think is going to happen after all
I think that's most likely. And it's very telling to me. I know special teams is not the glamorous job to 90% of the people. How have they not even had an interview, though, with anybody for it?
How do you know they haven't? That just hasn't been
feel
reported.
Like even though it's not a glamour job, it would get reported. Somebody would at least mention, they met with somebody,
Listen, I did a telephone interview for the job the other day. So
okay, there you go. Steve played special teams in high school.
I did play special teams
there
in
you
high
go.
School. I can coach pros. Would I be better than Ben Kotwica?
No,
probably not.
No, probably not. And if anyone tweets us that B. Mitch should do it, shut up. Just shut up. That's not going to happen.
They
one last Redskins.
I think B. Mitch has like burned every bridge at this point with all the stuff he's said.
Definitely. One last thing.
He's only allowed to continue talking because he's a Redskins legend. That's probably
the guy who belongs in the Hall of Fame. But he does not hold back. One last Redskins thing before we get on to the actual playoffs because we got to talk about those briefly. But Gruden said in the press recently that he really wants to bring Jameson Crowder back. Want your guys' thoughts on yay or nay on Crowder coming back? And by the way, the number that's gotten thrown out recently has been about $8 million a year for Crowder.
Yeah, I was going to say 8. Well, you go first. I'm curious to see what your thought is.
Well, I mean, I think it's a good idea to try and bring Crowder back. I remember Keim said it best. Reporter John Keim, he said it best maybe a week or two ago. I'm not sure. At the end of the day, no matter how, his season went this year, he is still really good at, creating separation. He still, presents problems at or around the line of scrimmage, and creates mismatch problems. It's hard for him to be covered in open field. And I mean, that's true. But, I wouldn't even say, but I think we should try and get him back, but I don't think we should, compete with the higher offers. If there's some offers, for example, Spencer Long, last year you wanted Spencer Long to come back, but, if you couldn't compete with the price and you had somebody there to fill his shoes, in terms of, what's his name? The second-year player?
Chase Rourier?
The center. Chase Rourier. I'm sorry. Rourier. Yeah, if you have somebody to fill his shoes, why are you going to compete with a price that high? So, for example, if, Jamison Crowder is out of their price range, you're going to have to roll with the younger guys, Trey Quinn, and maybe draft somebody. But, you have people that's capable of filling his shoes. Who knows how good they'll be? I don't think they can be as good as Jamison Crowder. And Jamison Crowder hasn't been, great, but he is a very good option in the slot. And I'm sure you can try and work towards that with the younger guys that you do have.
Yeah, Jamison Crowder's no Ryan Grant, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
But, at the end of the day, I don't think you really want to let 60 catches walk out of this building without having somebody there who can replace him. And, I know everybody thinks, Trey Quinn walks on water, and he's certainly a guy with potential, but do you really want to replace a proven pro just because we have a short white dude in the building that can play? Do you really want
Steve,
that?
he's short and white.
Yeah, it's rare, in the receiver game. I get him and Cole Beasley.
Well, and Wes Welker back in the day.
Oh, yeah, Wes Welker, and Julian Edelman, I guess. But we don't have Tom Brady throwing the ball, so I think Jamison Crowder has talent. Is he the best slot receiver in the NFL? Probably not, but he does have talent. He's somebody teams have to pay attention to because, trust me, NFL defenses are not worried about Trey Quinn.
No.
Okay? They might have to pay attention to Jamison Crowder. So he's the only receiver we have who's consistently been productive. And, yes, his 2018 was down about 10 catches, but think about the disaster we had at quarterback. I'm not sure.
Keep in mind, he missed about 4 or 5 games. So,
yeah, and he was hurt. So, I definitely think they ought to make an effort to keep him. Now, if he gets like a Jarvis Landry type of offer, that's crazy. No, you got to let him go. But would I do like $8 million for 2 or 3 years? Maybe. They don't have a ton of cap space, this year. They've got, I just did the salary cap last weekend, which took all day. So somebody please look at it.
Somebody please look at these things so Steve and I can stop bitching about the fact that no one looks at our weird stuff we do.
I literally spent about 8 hours for the 2018 salary cap. So they're at like $22 million, roughly right now. So they could do it if they wanted to, and they're going to cut some guys. So they could bring him in. Do you want him to be paid top dollar? Probably not. But I would pay him a decent amount of money to keep an experienced professional semi-dangerous receiver in there.
And I'm a big Jamison Crowder fan because I'll point out one thing, and that is that he is probably the most successful wide receiver the Redskins have drafted in 30 years.
Oh, I did this. I went down the list and looked. And the last one was Art Monk.
Right. And unless you count the guy we got from the USFL. Was that Ricky?
Well, Ricky Sanders, I was counting drafted by the Redskins. If you go down the list, there's been 1 or 2 that had.
Yeah, Michael Westbrook, Rod Gardner had 1 year apiece or something like that.
Was a freaking bust. Michael Westbrook, I did not count him. He's a bust.
Well, he had 1 good season though.
But
fair.
He's a bust. Stop. But the point is, the last career receiver that the Redskins drafted that stayed with the team was Art Monk. Henry Ellard was drafted by the Redskins, and then they foolishly let him go, and he went on to
James Thrash, similar. Like we brought him in, and he had success
Thrash
elsewhere.
Was another one.
Yeah,
right. So really, it's just been a decades of absolute crap that they have drafted at wide receiver, and Crowder is here, so they need to try and keep him.
I know that's not logical to some people, but it makes sense to me.
When you're the Redskins, listen, you have a wide receiver that isn't a total failure. You got to try and keep that man. And even, I make fun of Jamal because of his love for Ryan Grant and all that, and I still think, Grant's got naked pictures of Jay Gruden somewhere. But he's another one, to be perfectly honest. He was another productive receiver. No, he's never going to be Ricky Sanders. But he was a productive, quality
He's the kind of guy you keep on a depth chart for that third, fourth spot. Yeah.
Would he have been better than Jehu Chesson? Yes, absolutely. Of course he would have. So, he's a guy that other teams probably would have kept around, and we let him walk.
Yeah, we did.
So maybe Jamal was right. Maybe I need to stop making fun of Jamal for this.
Well, we got to remember, though, too, because Ryan Grant is he's like so great of a receiver. He got the contract that he did in Baltimore, and that's why we couldn't really re-sign him. And I don't blame that. But he got like a $8 million
Something
deal.
Like that. He got a ridiculous deal for his production.
Yeah, 4 year for $32, and they released him for Michael Crabtree. They did whatever they did to do. I can't remember. They did Ryan Grant dirty.
They faked an injury in his health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they did that. Let him go for Crabtree, who dropped like 1 million passes this year. But they did that. But that's the reason why we really couldn't re-sign him, is because he was so great that somebody signed him to a bigger deal. And I wouldn't expect us to keep him after we didn't win after Paul Richardson, and we invested in a couple other pieces on offense. So,
but at the end of the day,
we had to let greatness go.
Yeah, Grant played with the Colts this year, 1 year, $5 million. I would have definitely done that. Ryan Grant, as much as I thought he was.
The funny thing is, the guy who was our number 4, our Ryan Grant this year, Maurice Harris, I think he had identical stats mostly to what Ryan Grant did with the Colts. So,
I don't, just kind of expounding on all this, they're terrible at wide receivers, but we're also terrible at drafting quarterbacks. And developing quarterbacks. How many of these developmental picks are we going to take that they're going to let walk? They let Sudfeld walk. They drafted him, let him walk. They let Chase Daniels walk years ago. Remember that? And he's had a great career as a backup all this time.
He's played 10 years as a backup.
Kevin Hogan was here like 5 minutes, and they cut him. I
don't blame that.
Yeah, you're right. Kevin Hogan, maybe he deserved to be cut. But Sudfeld, I never understood why they got rid of Sudfeld. Why'd you get rid of Chase Daniels? There's these. The Redskins have got to do better. And I know I'm off topic here, but the Redskins have got to do better with drafting and developing young quarterbacks. I'm not talking about the number 1 overall pick. When you draft a quarterback in round 5, don't just freaking cut him a year later. You keep him and try to train him.
Or maybe if you draft one in round 4 and he works into being at least a decent starter, you don't have a pissing contest with him and eventually alienate him so he goes to another team for a fortune.
Well, there's that. They could have maybe you offer that guy a modest but quality contract
to stick around so you can build around him. Yeah.
Right. Who knows? But
that's a weird concept. I know, building around a decent quarterback.
Any quarterback. Not decent. Any quarterback. It's just
the last time they actually tried it. It was I think Jason Campbell at this point.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And of course, Soup was a first-round draft.
And I'm not saying he was great or even good, but they at least tried.
You can even go back to Trent Green. They let Trent Green run out, and he turned out to be a franchise quarterback for the Chiefs.
I was talking about it with someone on our blog. This team's had been around for 90 years. We've had 3 franchise quarterbacks in 90 years. This team is just historically awful about quarterbacks. Okay,
wait a minute.
In my opinion, yes.
So, obviously, Joe Theismann, Sonny Jurgensen, Sammy Baugh. You can maybe throw Billy Killer in
but
there.
he only... Maybe. I was kind of drawing a little line in the sand that if you haven't played 100 games, I don't know how...
Okay. Because I was going to throw Brippen out there, but...
that's the thing. A lot of guys who were good were here for 3-4 seasons.
And then the other guy would be Brad Johnson.
2 years, Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but the talent was there. So, yeah.
So, yeah.
So, anyway. Well, so there's that.
No, it's fine. Let's get back on track, though, because we got to talk about the 2 games left. Or I guess there's really 3 games left, but the 2 games this week.
Championship Sunday.
I'm going to start us with the game that I think, less exciting to me, and that's going to be the Patriots-Chiefs. Let's start with the AFC, if you guys are okay with that.
You guys want to guess the? You want to guess the bet?
Jamal
odds?
probably knows it because he's probably already put money down.
That's true. Joe, do you have money on this game through any sort of legal fashion? Of course,
Well,
not some.
I think it's legal in most of the
book.
area around here now.
I plan on playing. I haven't placed my bets yet, but
Okay.
I do plan on
All
playing.
right, yeah. So
I've
Steve,
been
give us the
following,
number because
so.
I'm not even gonna guess.
All right, it's the Chiefs.
Minus 3. So basically,
3-point
even money
favorites.
because of the whole Chiefs at home.
The Chiefs are home. Yeah, and since we're doing it, I mean the other game is the same. It's Saints minus 3.
I like that. That means toss up either way.
Well, here's the thing. It seems to me about the Patriots. I guess let's just do that game first, huh? The Patriots have had 3 road wins all year, and Kansas City won 7 games at home. This is not the same. This is not your daddy's Patriots team.
Still dangerous. Still Tom Brady.
Yeah, it's kind of like that old. Who's the country guy? The country singer. Keith
Urban.
Oh, no, the other guy, the big tall guy, who does the funny songs, the Red Solo Cup guy.
I don't know. I don't know country music.
It'll come to me.
Well, I mean, the only person that I can think of, I'm not a country guy.
Steve, you're the
I
only
can
one who
think of
lives in
one
Texas
person
here,
named
so you're going to have to
Kenny
take the
Chesney.
country stuff on your own.
Who is Kenny Chesney?
Not him. No, not him.
Okay, I took a shot in the dark.
It's gonna bother me. Toby Keith.
Kenny Keith.
Toby Keith did a song that said, "I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm good as once as I ever was." That's the case with the New England Patriots. Tom Brady's old. His arm isn't what it used to be. I remember Sean and I interviewed Kean Fahey, who hates us now, a couple years ago, and we asked him about that, and he said, that it looked a few years ago that Brady was kind of in a decline, and then he came back, and I think he's definitely in a
he
decline
changed his
now.
diet, and he did all those things to kind of get a second wind, yeah.
He's got some weird guru dude,
Yeah.
like new age guru dude helping him. But point is, their defense isn't what it was. They're more reliant on Sony Michel in the run game now than they were. So, and they just have not been. They just have flat out been bad on the road this year. Sorry to say that, Pats fans, but they have. So this may finally be the time. It just kind of feels like the Chiefs' year to me. And so I think probably that the Patriots, Billy Belichick's going to have some game plan that's going to work. Because that's just what he does. But I just think it's too much for him this year, and I think the Chiefs squeaked this one.
I mean, I'm with you. I think even after losing a star running back, the Chiefs' running game has still been very effective. We saw that last week. It's going to be the one thing that could factor into this game big time is this whole wind situation and cold weather. That it's going to be like -5 to -10 degrees for this game. And you know how that kind of cold weather can mess with a passing game.
Well, if anybody's equipped to that.
Right, exactly. They are probably more well-equipped for that than Kansas City, because I think Kansas City relies on Mahomes airing it out a lot more, and the Patriots can adjust their game plan a lot better for that kind of condition. So that might favor the Pats a little more. But, I mean, as much as we talk about Belichick, Andy Reid's no slouch. Andy Reid's probably one of the best offensive minds in the last 20 years in the NFL, if not the best. So I don't expect him to come out and be inept.
Like he slouches. Andy Reid looks like he slouches all the time, actually. But, yeah, from a coaching standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the Chiefs will find a way to pull it out. The only issue that I always had, and that many have, is it's just Bill Belichick, and it's the conference title game. The thing is, they do struggle on the road in the playoffs, and that's the benefit of them always having a home field advantage throughout the playoffs, or more so having the third seed or the second seed, because the first seed always finds a way to lose. The third seed always finds a way to lose, or things like that. So their road becomes a little bit easier in the playoffs. However, this road is a little bit different. And they have to go on the road to make it to the Super Bowl. And what's going to be rough is that you're facing an offense that, frankly, you couldn't really stop the first time around. And they put up 40 on your field. Now you're back home. Well, they're back home, and you're going on the road against them. It's going to be rough for them, and I think that the Chiefs can pull it out. I forgot. I think it was you, Alex, that said because of the loss of Kareem Hunt, it hasn't really stopped them. That was good. That was a good showing against the Colts, and they're gonna have to keep it up because, to be honest with you, it's crazy. But both defenses were able to shut down the run against their opponents, against the Chargers and against the Colts. It was kind of crazy because both defenses aren't that good. But it's gonna be a dogfight, I think, especially in the trenches.
Listen to this about Kansas City.
Yeah.
You know, Kareem Hunt played 11 games, and that was when the whole incident happened, and that took us through their bye week. And so he was averaging 4.6 yards per attempt. Well, Spencer Ware and Damian Williams, 4.8 and 5.1 yards per attempt, respectively. You know, they were actually
outperforming.
More effective runners, outperforming him on an overall basis. And in terms of, and Kareem Hunt has got a ton of catches, 35 targets, 26 receptions on the year. Well, Ware and Williams, between the two of them, had 43 receptions. So I think this is a case, I'm not saying Kareem Hunt doesn't have talent, and the woman beating aside, you'd want a guy like that on the Redskins for sure. But I think this is a case where Andy Reid is such a good coach and the system is so good and there's so many weapons that I think it's not necessarily a complete plug-and-play thing, but I think those running backs have a lot of opportunities that they wouldn't.
Andy Reid, really, you have to give him credit for that kind of scheme. I don't think anybody schemes dual-threat running backs as good as him.
Andy Reid has skis the running back, the Redskins, out of 2 straight trades now.
There's that too.
They're never going to trade with Andy Reid ever again.
Why would anyone ever trade Andy Reid for a quarterback? I don't know.
If Andy Reid calls, don't answer the phone.
Yeah, do that sound. That's what he needs to hear.
Exactly. Yeah. That's all we need.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else to say about this, other than the fact that Patrick Mahomes. I guess if they win, we're gonna have Steve do his Patrick Mahomes impression, and we'll do an interview maybe.
I have a Patrick.
It's your Kermit the Frog impression.
I need to come up with one. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can do that. Didn't I try to do a whole show?
Yeah, you did.
The Frog once?
Or you tried to do at least like 10 minutes.
I think I ran.
Yeah, but since Patrick Mahomes sounds like Kermit the Frog,
show.
No, I think Jamal. It was back when we had our former host that you replaced.
Oh, okay.
Because he did a really good Hank Hill, and I could do Kermit really well. So we used to do a lot of those.
That was when the show was a little goofier.
You may have to come up. You may have to come up with an impression, Jamal.
Good luck with
so let's move on.
Real quick about the Patriots running game. Just to go over this, Sony Michel is their leading rusher, 931 yards. They've relied on him, 209 attempts. Pinch me if I ever thought that the Patriots have any running back that had 209 attempts on a year. That's just
no. They usually have like 2 or 3 guys with 100 attempts.
Yeah, right. If that, and they're a really high pass run ratio.
They didn't have Corey Dillon like way back when he was a pretty run heavy.
Several years ago, they had Corey Dillon. Yes, but even then, he did not do Sony Michel.
I told you Sony Michel was going to be a good running back.
Yeah, he's a good running back. What can you say? So I just wanted to, for those of you who haven't paid too much attention to them, this is a much more running heavy team, and that may bode well, like you said, Alex, if the weather is just a total disaster.
All right. Well, okay. So let's move from a place where the weather's going to be a disaster to a game that won't be, because let's face it, nice weather all the time. Rams Saints. This is going to be probably the high scoring shootout of these two games this week. I know personally, I'm kind of happy. No matter who wins, I love both these offenses. Love Sean McVay. Love Drew Brees. Like, this is just going to be a fun one to watch in my mind.
Well, first of all, this is part 2, okay? Because these same teams played in this same building back in the beginning of November, and the Saints won that game 45-35. It was a complete shootout, Sunday afternoon game. So, I mean, there's no reason to expect that it would not be the same
deal,
again, because both the Saints and the Rams have really run scores up on teams. Look, I think the Saints are rolling a bit better than the Rams.
Of late, yes.
It seems to, of late. That having been said, Todd Gurley's back for the Rams, but the Saints just seem to have it all put together this year. And yes, the Cowboys kind of did it, or not the Cowboys. The Eagles did a bit of a number on them last week. With some
they kind of sucker punched them early, kind of thing. Yeah,
they did, and some of the defensive schemes they were running were a little bit different. Granted, but Sean Payton is a really really good coach.
Yep.
And if there's a guy, he's aggressive. His schemes are creative. And he's got the players that can execute this thing without mistakes, at least in terms of the offense. And they've changed themselves. They've turned themselves from a team with no defense at all to a pretty quality defensive team. So I think the Saints are going to figure out one way or another. They're going to figure out how to do it.
And I'm sure everyone else knows it too. But I really love what the Saints are doing with that backup quarterback, kind of playing a weird. Yeah,
Taysom Hill.
He's playing this weird wildcat wingback.
He's like to do everything.
It's almost like a throwback to the kind of player you'd see in the 1920s, where it's just like this guy, he's going to get you maybe 2 first downs, but he's clutch.
He's sort of Sammy Baugh-like.
He's the ultimate weapon. He does a lot of things. Returns kicks, plays tight end, wildcat offense,
fullback,
traditional quarterback, fullback, tight end. Well, I said tight end already. Receiver, gunner on special teams.
He's what Tim Tebow should have done.
Yeah. That's Steve. You couldn't. That's crazy. Because if he would have just bought into the idea. I respected him for really sticking to what he wanted to do, which is quarterback. But at the end of the day, like if you wanted longevity in the league, exactly what he should have did. Taysom Hill is doing now. He would have fared off well. He should have just played tight end. See how that worked out for him.
Instead, he's like in double-A ball.
Well, and who's the quarterback from Navy that we had on our practice squad, and he was the Ravens?
Keenan Robinson.
I wish that for once in our lives, I wish that we saw the Redskins being like, "Hey, we have this guy who can do everything. Have him do everything."
What's that, Jamal?
I was saying that was a linebacker, wasn't it? Keenan Robinson?
No, not Keenan.
Wait a minute.
Keenan Reynolds, right?
It's Keenan.
Keenan Reynolds. There you go. I was about to say, I knew it was Keenan something, though.
I was a bit surprised they didn't use him on special teams.
Yeah, I was too.
Because
he had some speed.
Whatever. Look, the Saints. Here's the thing about the Saints to me. If you go back in the Wayback Machine, like 3-4 seasons ago, the NFL pundits who know way more than we do were beginning to wonder if Drew Brees was washed up. And the Saints were in cap hell. They were in league hell thanks to Greg Williams. And what they did on offense is they found a couple guys who can run the ball. Number one, Alvin Kamara is a revelation. What was he, a third-round pick, fourth-round pick? Yeah, the dude was a revelation. And he is the epitome of the modern multi-purpose back. This is a guy that Jay Gruden would just give his
He's what we're hoping Darius Geis becomes.
Yeah, I was about to say something ugly. I mean, he would give his left leg for a guy like Alvin Kamara. And then they have the power back in Mark Ingram. They've really turned themselves into a team that is a huge threat to run the ball and run the ball effectively. And that has really done wonders for Drew Brees. It's opened the offense up. And then you throw in the most creative play caller in the league, who's not named Bill Belichick at least. And that is why this offense is so good.
I mean, if you look at these 4 head coaches, you really have some great creative head coaches on all 4 of these teams. I mean, McVay is taking a totally youthful, new approach to kind of his playing calling, using a lot of college stuff. Andy Reid has reinvented himself quite a bit. I mean, you still see the classic Andy Reid West Coast plays that we saw when he was with the Eagles, but he's added in a bunch of new elements. Belichick is Belichick, probably the greatest defensive mind the NFL's ever seen. And
have you guys seen Sean McVay's girlfriend?
Yeah.
Holy moly.
The perks of living in L.A., Perks being the key word.
Rich
I
guy
haven't
in
seen
LA.
her. But I have
Jamal,
no
you
doubt
gotta look her up.
she looks pretty good.
Yeah, you got to look her up, man. In terms of the Rams, the Rams were a bit. I mean, when I say up and down, they were 13-3. So
they were up, down,
but
up. Yeah,
I mean, the last month of the season they were 2-2. But you got to remember that was when
and they knew they'd lock things up more or less.
Yeah, but they did stop scoring a ton of points there toward the end. I mean, they beat up on the 49ers. And
right. Who didn't?
Yeah, who didn't? The Dallas Cowboys last week played them really tough. And I thought the Cowboys did a solid defensive job. I don't think – here's why I think the Saints are going to win this. I don't think that the Rams are going to run off 275 yards rushing 2 weeks in a row.
Nope.
And that's what the Rams had to do to the Cowboys to win the game. I think the Saints are too good for that. And I just think at the end of the day, the Saints are just a little bit more capable team because that's just unrealistic to expect that much rushing.
I'm going to give the edge to the
I
Saints. I think it all comes down to me. Just they have the veteran leadership, and that gives you an edge in the playoffs. You've got a coach who's been there before,
and it's in New Orleans.
Quarterback who's done it all.
Yeah, I mean it's in New Orleans, and the Saints are. There is an advantage to that, believe it or not. The Rams won 6 games on the road, so they did well, but that means that 2 of their losses came on the road. So they were slightly worse on the road than they were at home. So take that for what you will. So there you go.
So, Jamal, do you have anything to add, or do you guys want to just give your prediction of who's going to be in the Super Bowl?
No, I mean I don't have much to add. I was just saying I do agree that it's going to be hard to run against. I think both teams, to be honest with you, it's going to be especially difficult against the Saints. They rarely give up a lot anyway throughout the season, and it's not going to change against the Rams. But I mean I think what will happen. I mean, it's the same thing I said with the Chiefs and the Patriots. It's really going to come down to the trenches. It's going to be a lot of work going down there. You have good defensive fronts on both sides of the football and good offensive lines. So, I mean, whoever can control it the most, I don't think they're going to be able to run for 200 plus yards again. But if you're able to run the ball for at least 80 with a good yards per carry average, you'll be able to control or maintain a balanced offensive game, and that's going to be key to at least keeping the other offense off the field.
And if it comes down to it, I have more faith in Sean Payton than I do McVay. Not that I'm not bashing McVay, but I mean,
just right now he has the experience.
Yeah, I mean, and this dude, went for it on 4th down in the divisional round of the playoffs on his own 30-yard line last week.
That is the Eagles' fault because you cannot be that foolish to allow to first off not accept the penalty, given that you're giving them an inch. They only need an inch on 4th down to get that, and you have Taysom Hill right behind the center. You don't recognize that. Like they're going for it all the way. So no, I agree. But you got to know that they're going to go for it. So just live and die by the 3rd down. Back it up and try and stop them again.
Yep.
Don't give them that 1 yard to get.
Yeah, I mean you're right. But my point was I didn't mean to analyze that play. You're 100% right about the play. I just think Sean Payton is creative enough to be a difference maker in this game.
Absolutely. So I guess are we all saying Saints Chiefs, or is anyone saying anything different?
I said
Saints Chiefs.
All right.
Saints Chiefs.
I will be happy either way. Saints Rams, whoever wins. I just don't want to see the Pats again in the Super Bowl. That's it.
I'm just tired of them more than anything else.
We talked about on the other show that you do, Steve. I think the Pats being the
it's just business.
Listen to
Please
that.
listen.
It's actually a pretty good show. That's my ringing endorsement. But I think part of the reason why the NFL's ratings kind of started going down was that the Pats were just in every Super Bowl and that people got sick of it. All right, we got 10 minutes left or so. Let's keep doing our offseason review. We've already done quarterbacks and wide receivers. I want to finish up the passing game and talk about the actual – I think that we might be in more trouble at tight end than wide receiver long term because I think we had some real struggles there this year.
Why would you think that, Alex?
So
just because we have one tight end that can't stay on the field, another one that's about 100
and then
years
a third one who's a good blocker. Yeah. So let's start with the tight ends. Yep.
Tight ends. Okay, well, first of all, Jordan Reed had a down year by his standards. 84 targets, 54 receptions, 558 yards. Just as a measure of how pathetic our receiver core was, he led the receivers in yardage. He was the leading receiver. Josh Doxson was the only one who was even close. He had
it's like a difference of 50 yards, but still.
Yeah. Vernon Davis definitely had a down
I think
year.
Vernon Davis looks like he might be done.
Seemed like he was dropping passes every week. I mean, he had 36 targets, 25 receptions, and at least half of those are drops.
That doesn't sound right when you think back on his season either, that he had that many catches versus that many drops. It felt like every deep ball was a drop.
Jeremy Sprinkle, I think, has talent. I know, Jamal, you liked him when we drafted. I remember you praising him when we drafted him.
Yeah.
I think I don't think he excels in any one area, but I think if you just give him a chance, and he did get a chance at the end of the year, I think he can play the more traditional tight end role and not so much the H-back and split him wide and all the stuff that Jordan Reed does. I think he can play the more traditional role and run these underneath routes that tight ends kind of do, and I think he can do well at it. Is he a starter? Probably not. Or a guy who scares anybody? No. I think the Redskins would certainly do well to draft somebody this year. And I'll tell you what, if they really had guts, they would cut Jordan Reed. And
financially, I know Reed's a big cap number right now.
Big hit.
And I want to let's really, because I feel like we're going to want to spend most of the time talking about Reed and Davis. I want to further expound on Sprinkle. I really like that he is that block first. Then he'll just leak out for a quick dump off pass kind of tight end. I think that every team needs a guy like that, and we went too long without one. I'm glad that we have that guy again.
I mean, Jamal, tell us what you liked about him in the first place.
It was more so the potential that he had. There was coming out that they felt like he was just mainly an inline blocking tight end, and I mean that was fair. He had some work to do, in training camp, but I just like the fact that what I've seen from him, he used his body well in terms of as a pass catcher. He was very physical, and he had strong hands. The route running needed a little bit of work, but he was able. Well, I would say Kirk Cousins was able to get him the ball pretty consistently in the practices that I've seen, and he made the best of his opportunities. I didn't see him drop one pass, and that's what I like. Now, I felt like if he was to continue to get those opportunities, he would show that he was capable of being a more useful tight end. And unfortunately, this year they didn't really use him in that role.
Not till later, yeah.
He's sparing. Yes, he got on the field sparingly in terms of as a pass catcher. So it's kind of, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't stunt his progression, but it more so just puts it on hold. Because clearly I'm pretty sure they're working with him at practice and things like that. But that's what I liked about him. Just the potential that I saw in the way he was working at camp and practice and stuff like that.
I mean, the man is 6'6", 256 pounds is what he's listed at. The only other guy who's a traditional, tight end size is Matt Flanagan,
who we saw a little bit of late.
He's been on and off. Yeah, he's been on and off the roster, on the practice squad, all over every place. Sprinkle just wasn't going to get a lot of time ahead of Davis and Reed, before those two guys both went down in their annual injuries. I think Jay likes the idea of having more of the Chris Cooley H-back type and versatile tight ends, more so than Sprinkle, who, while I like him, he plays the traditional role, and I just don't think a guy like that is ever going to be featured too much in a Jay Gruden offense. Excuse me.
Yeah,
if he can get to being like a 20 catch a year kind of guy for us, I think that's what he should be. I'd love to see that.
And listen, we're going to get to draft previews on another show later, but just as a general point, this draft is a very tight.
Is it really?
Draft.
I didn't know that.
And so it's huge, a massive amount of tight ends. And so this is the draft for them to draft a tight end. If they were, or was ever one, it's this year.
Well, okay, so let's move up the food chain. Big fan of Vernon Davis overall, but down year for him. He's 35. Is it over for him? Is it time to move on?
He's got one more year. He can be cut. I think the Redskins like his speed. because he's one of the few guys with speed still on the team, it's kind of pathetic when you think about it. That 35-year-old is maybe your fastest offensive weapon. Okay, that's pretty sad, but that's the fact. Because Davis was one of the fastest players in the league, period, in his youthful days, and he's still. I think if you put him out there in a foot race with every one of the receivers, he would probably win. Including Paul Richardson. Paul Richardson may be.
Yeah, you're probably
Paul
right.
Richardson might be his only competition in that. So I think you need team speed. Davis for some reason just didn't click well with Alex Smith, which was
any
really
of the
weird.
other quarterbacks.
Yeah, true.
I don't think he clicked well. No. Period. You're right.
It's just a down year, but I don't. I bet you they keep him around just because Jay likes him and he has speed. He's got a big cap number next year. It's over $6 million, but I think they keep him around.
I don't. To be honest with you, after this year, it was kind of rough to see him, revert back to the Vernon Davis that I actually thought we were going to get before, he signed here. He had an issue with drops a lot throughout his career, and for some reason it faded in a good way. I don't know why or what he did to hone in on his concentration and focus, but he played better when he came here. But for some reason, 2018. He reverted back to the Vernon Davis of old, in which he was able to use his speed, but he relied a lot on body catches, not really focusing on things, and it results in a lot of drops. And I think that for whatever reason, because that's all. Like if you're going to be known for or used for a person with speed, and being a receiving tight end, and you're not able to block as a tight end. Then your value is a pass catcher. And if you're not able to do that well, you should be, critically evaluated. And if he's not able to, continue well into the preseason, then, you can maybe look into cutting him then. Because, there are going to be tons of cuts at that time. You can look at cutting them then in preseason. But, I think they bring him into camp for sure. And just go from there.
Listen, Davis has never been a hands guy. Particularly his career catch percentage is about 63%, which is significantly less than Jordan Reed, who's got some of the best hands in football. And
right,
I think really and truly overall last year in 2017 he had 43 receptions on 69 targets. It just didn't feel like he was dropping so many balls, last year as he did this year. It just. Somebody prove us wrong. If you want to go out there and watch all the Vernon Davis film, I'm not going to do that. But it felt like he was dropping balls constantly that were hitting him right in the hands.
I think the reason it feels that way this year, and I might be, it might just be my own perception, but the drops he had this year, a lot of them would have been big plays, touchdown type plays, or at least like a 30-yard pass kind of thing. He was dropping the big ones this year, whereas I think in previous years, if it was a drop, it was maybe a dump pass or a 5-yard out that he just didn't quite get to. It felt like this year he was dropping the big ones.
Yeah, they were highly visible drops, no doubt about that.
Yes.
In terms of Jordan Reed, it's just a real shame the way his career has gone. I think, in my opinion, he does have a ton of talent. I think he's got great hands, and the reason why he's a mismatch is he runs very precise routes. He's deceptively fast, and he's deceptively agile. And so he's a guy who's too athletic for linebackers, too big for corners. And so he's a mismatch. Except, the obvious flaw is what we all know about him. And at this point, I don't think anybody can reasonably expect Jordan Reed to ever play 16 games. And I don't know why.
No, he's a 13 game on a good year.
Yeah, and I don't know why you pay a guy $9 million a year because his cap hit next year is 9.something million, 9.6, I think.
Right.
I don't know if listen, he played 13 games this year, and that was the second highest of his career. Can you really do that as much talent as he has?
No, he's the kind of guy you have ideally as a dangerous number 2 tight end. Because he's not going to be healthy. And then he's more of a perk when he's on the field. You need somebody else in front of him.
By the way, he dropped more balls this year than he has in his entire career. He's never had below his lowest catch percentage in his career was 2016, 74%. That was his lowest. This year, 64%, well lower than his career average. I mean,
now I wonder if some of that has to do with also having a new quarterback and just not getting in rhythm with Smith.
Maybe.
But at the end of the day, it's 10% less. I mean, the study I did of him a year and a half ago now, I guess, his career catch percentage was almost the highest in NFL history for a non-running back.
Right.
It's very underrated, and this year it just wasn't his year.
No, it was a down year for him. I mean, I think his health overall better
for a while.
And the fact that he ended the season fairly healthy for him.
Well, he missed the last 3 games of the year. I don't know if I'd say he's healthy.
I think they more shut him down than he really was hurting. I think that those last couple games are like, hey, let's just shut down our best guy. Because
regardless of why he wasn't there, what can you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so we're at an hour. I at least want to get through one more position, so let's do running backs. I was going to do O-line, but I think running backs is a little quicker to get through at this point.
Okay.
Because O-line will probably take an entire show.
Because there were 50 guys that played O-line for us this year.
There were 50 guys, and it was such a train wreck. But let's go to the lesser train wreck, which is Darius Geis injured in what was that? Play 5?
Something like that. Yeah, it was 1 quarter. He got through 1 quarter.
Looked great for 3 runs. Really excited to see him next year. I think we all agree there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think. All right, do we cut Kelly, or is he on IR? What happened with him?
We definitely didn't
Kelly,
cut him.
No. Kelly was on IR, and he is a free agent coming up this year.
Okay.
So
can we just guess he's not going to be back? You guys want to just make that prediction? Right now, I don't know.
I don't know if I'm willing to say that.
Honestly,
okay. I think he's a better running back than Samaje Perine. You guys know I'm down on Perine.
That was the next game I was going to get to, though.
Overall as a group, obviously for season in review, obviously Adrian Peterson was basically the lone bright spot on the entire offense.
Right.
He ran for 1,042 yards, 251 carries, 4.2 yards per attempt. And let me just tell you guys, if you don't realize this, there's only been a handful, 2 other seasons in the entire history of the NFL in which a running back who is age 33 or over has hit all those benchmarks. Over 4 yards per carry.
Riggins was one.
No, Riggins was not one. No, Riggins did not run for over 4 yards per attempt. He was at 3.8 yards per attempt.
Oh, okay.
3.839. You have to go back to the Steelers in the 50s for this. 250 yards carries, over 1,000 yards, 4.2 yards per attempt. That is an historically great season for a running back as old as he is.
I'm surprised Emmitt Smith never had a season like that, given that he played for a million years.
Smith really fell off the wagon when he went to the Cardinals. It was terrible when he was that old.
Yeah, I remember that, but I thought that was 37 or something.
You can't say enough good things about Adrian Peterson, I think. He did have his games where, he didn't do much, but
the latter part of the season when they had no guards left, he was really struggling.
Right. I mean, and I find it hard to. It looked like he had his burst and agility and everything. It just at some point when
he was getting hit in the backfield every time.
In the backfield,
constantly. Yeah. I don't have the numbers, but I think the last game he had 4 runs for 0 yards, and they just shut him down.
Why would you torture him?
Yeah.
Okay, and then Chris Thompson. He was hurt for a bunch of the year too, but 43 attempts, 178 yards. He also contributed 41 receptions, 268 yards. Capri Bibbs, 20 receptions, 101 yards before they inexplicably cut him. God knows why that happened.
Yep.
Samaje Perine, 8 attempts, 32 yards.
Did nothing.
Absolutely nothing. 8 attempts, 32 yards on the season. And then the aforementioned Kelly, who was hurt all year, had 4 attempts, 8 yards. So between Perine and Kelly, they had 12 attempts for 40 yards. And yet, the guy who was productive in Capri Bibbs got cut. Somebody explain that to me, because I don't understand.
I don't. I mean, we talked about it when it happened. My only explanation was, you have Chris Thompson.
Well, you have Byron Marshall, who the coaching staff likes Byron Marshall. He ran for 3 yards per attempt this year. On 3 receptions, 3 carries, 9 yards. So, I think one of these guys is going to be back next year. One of those guys is
one of those Marshall, P. Ryan.
Marshall, P. Ryan, and Kelly's. One of those dudes is going to be the third. Is going to be the backup running back.
See, I think they're going to maybe draft somebody late.
I mean, the other option would be to bring Adrian Peterson back. You know, Peterson's
there's that
Peterson
too.
is the type of guy who needs a lot of carries to get going. You know, so he may not be quite as effective if he's like splitting carries with Darius Geis. But all the same, I think having a Hall of Famer in the building to be a mentor for Geis is a great thing, I think.
No, I mean, and the thing is, Peterson said publicly, at least, that he was very much open to coming in for that role of being the number 2 guy, being behind Geis.
I mean, you can say what you want about Peterson's criminal stuff and all that. Nobody here on this show, I think I can speak for you two guys, nobody here is advocating child abuse or anything like that. You know, but from my perspective, that's behind us. He did his time. He served his sentence. It's over with. And I think you guys need to move on from it. You know, that's my opinion. But from a football perspective, I think there's no downside in to bring Adrian Peterson back as long as the contract can be worked out that's reasonable.
I think the prospect of a running back core that is Peterson, Thompson, and Geis is pretty enticing. Like I said, I still think that like 7th round, they might draft somebody. The name that when I'm doing mock drafts starts popping out a lot in my mind is Bryce Love from Stanford, who's hurt. So he'll drop like a rock. But if you could steal a guy like that late, you know, that would be a pretty big win, not for next year, but for the year after.
We'll just have an all-ACL team.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, it's not like we don't break them anyway. Come on. You know.
Am I wrong, Jamal? I mean, come on.
No, you're not wrong. It's just like it's the fact that it is true. So it's I wouldn't say it, but it's true.
So I mean, are you re-signing AP if you're the GM, Jamal, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have nothing against AP. I would. I mean, personally, I like him. I was going to. To be honest with you, I was done with the Skins. Well before the last game of the season, but given that AP was on my team and I didn't know if he was coming back next year, I was going to go to the Eagles game just to watch him run. I didn't care what the score was. I just wanted to see him live because I never seen him. And I'm just glad that I didn't because he only had 2 carries. And I didn't see him anymore. It would have been a waste of everything. Yes. So, I mean, I wouldn't mind having him come back. And
if the price is right, I think we all know that,
I mean,
right?
if the price is right, just from a on the field standpoint, you know, we seen what he did with 15 to 20 carries, and a lot of people think that's going to get in the way of Geis. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you can split 30 carries between the 2 people, I'm sure Adrian Peterson wouldn't mind. It's not going to be such a big deal, even if he get 10 to 12 touches a game. That's just fine with him too.
You know, here's the other reason is, I mean, I love Darius Geis. If you guys remember who were listening back, you know, last year.
We were all very excited.
Yeah, I loved him as a prospect. Ernest Biner came on this show and sung the praises of Darius Geis before the draft, before we knew he was going to be a Redskin. He was talking about Geis as one of the guys he loved. But we really don't know actually what he's going to do. We saw Darius for like 5 plays. You know, it's not a bad idea to have a hedge against a guy who we didn't see play, who is coming off a torn ACL. And yes, he's posted some workout videos that look good, but you know, we don't know how he's going to play. So I think they need to have a competent pro whose name is not Samaje Perine, who can run if it turns out Geis isn't the Geis we all, you know, hope we're getting.
Right, and Chris Thompson can't just be that guy.
Chris Thompson.
As much as I like Chris Thompson too, he's a shotgun
Chris Thompson is
receiving
best when he gets his
running back.
touches in small doses.
Right, and when he gets them, you know, in open space.
You don't want to send Chris Thompson on power runs through the A gap too much.
I personally thought he lost his step, to be honest with you. After
did you?
I think he was a step slower because of the broken leg the last year.
No, when he came back, he was fine. I was speaking after the I think it was ribs or something that knocked him out.
After that, you think so?
He came back really slow. And it was. I mean, I thought it was pretty apparent. Like noticeable difference. Because when he came back initially, I thought he was pretty explosive, and it was weird. But yeah, I would have thought
he wasn't as effective. I think you're right about that. He wasn't nearly as effective when he came back.
No, that's true.
You want to hear the funny story?
Again, he's also coming back when we had no guard.
The funny story. Maybe we can end on this.
Let's end on that one.
Funny story out today on Twitter where he said when AP showed up for the first day, Chris went out over to introduce himself to him. Was sitting there chatting with Adrian, and he's thinking in his head that AP knows who he is because he had a very solid year in 2017. He's thinking, running back. And then Peterson turns to him and goes, "So do you play cornerback?"
Yeah.
In other words, no, you weren't on my radar scope in any way.
Right.
That's
right. I'm here. Yeah. You're here. Stay there.
Pretty funny.
All right. Let's end it on that. That's a good little story that I'm sure some people probably saw on Twitter, but if they didn't, they heard it here.
We're going to be back next week with guards, kids. Please tune in. It'll be exciting.
No, we're just going to do all of the O-line. Rip it off like a Band-Aid. That's the plan. And also talk about the Super Bowl, I guess. We'll do that. We have 2 weeks to
we'll have to preview the Pro Bowl. That'll be exciting.
Oh, Jesus.
No, we're going to, I'm going to come up with a guest. We're going to have a guest next week. Somebody.
All right. That sounds good. All right. So tune in next week. We will have a guest, hopefully. And keep listening to the shows. Keep, reading our blog posts that we put on our blog. Keep following us on Twitter. Keep doing what you're doing.
Sounds like you're not excited in any way about that, Alex. Give us some energy.
Well, it's getting to winter. I was going to say keep shoveling that snow, kids, because we're going to get more of it this weekend.
It was like 60 degrees here today.
I don't care what it was down there. So that takes care of it for this week's episode, and you all have fun out there in Redskins land. Goodbye.
Where is...